Okay, people. Same day, December 25th, 2000 and... I was going to say 15, but it's actually 17. Got a video being uploaded right now, the power of attorney revoked, not. And now, I'm moving on to the Patient's Property Act. Because I am working on my amendment for CIBC Bank. And as I am doing so, obviously I'm reading up on the Power of Attorney Act. And... Nice. Okay.
Here now.
I don't want it, Andre. The camera, just please, Andre. Don't distract.
Okay.
Oh, it's okay. So anyway, as I'm reading the Power of Attorney Act, it says, well, I don't know where it says that. Because as I'm reading my notice of claim, I mentioned in here, an enduring power of attorney is suspended in accordance with the Patient Property Act. Here we are again going into these word plays. So of course now I'm looking in the Patient Property Act to find out how that happens, right? So from what I can gather, the only way that can happen would be is if an application was made to a court or to the public guardian trustee for a committee to be appointed to a patient so that that committee can manage the patient's assets and do an internal audit on those assets, and then that information has to be forwarded to the public guardian and trustee. So in some way or another, it all goes back to the public guardian and trustee. But I'd like to say though, people, as I'm reading this stuff, okay, what it does is it makes me feel very, very concerned for the public, because it's dangerous. Yeah, that's right. It's dangerous. In your room, Andre, please stop.
No, they're just past 2.
Okay, well, I'm busy right now. Wait till I'm done. Anyway, it's very dangerous in the very manner of how strangers can come into people's lives and just take over their life and then their assets, right? And it goes from one act to another act to another act. One big circle. If they want your money, people, they're coming after you. Right? Because we know that the poor people aren't getting this so-called protection under these acts. Right? Because there's no assets to manage, basically. Now, in my travels over the last couple of years with, trying to deal with this situation, I came across an article. I don't know if I printed it out or not. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. So I don't have everything logged yet. What do you call it? It said that in British Columbia, Canada, and I'm just remembering this off the top of my head, right? It said that in British Columbia, Canada, what do you call it? Like thousands of people. I think they estimated 10,000 people to be illegally detained through these acts for the purpose of detaining them, and probably for the majority, if not all, to seize their assets, people, basically. And it's being done in such a way that it's not being done correctly, because most people don't know how to do it, or they're cutting corners, right? I would think to get that information legitimately would require going under the Freedom of Information Act to the right department to find out how many people are actually committed under the Mental Health Act, under the Property Act, under the Guardianship Act, because there's a few of them. It's not just one. And like I said, it's not written in the context of protecting the individual. It's, in my opinion, written to get to those assets, because that is the common denominator in all of them. How to get those people's money or assets. And then they divvy it up between their committees, the public guardian and trustee, and, you know, they pick and choose who will be appointed to be the managers of these estates. This is what the Property Act is about. They have to take it to court and then select a committee, and then the committee has to be approved. You know, this is the gist of this act, right? And then ultimately, though, that committee has to answer to the public guardian and trustee, and before the patient can get their assets back and get on with their lives, you know, it has to go in front of the committee, and then it has to go in front of a judge, and then it's got to go back to the public guardian and trustee, and then that person just might be lucky enough to walk away not broke after everybody takes their fees and does what they do. All right? So, you know, I'm like, if it's that easy for people to take over power of attorneys and enduring power of attorneys, you know, in a, I guess you could say, legitimate sense when it comes to these acts, is just as easy for them to do it illegally as in the case of what happened to Uncle John. You want this now? Would you like your milk now? Oh, there you go. Right? And that's scary. Because it's at the point where if I appoint, you know, one of my kids, or, well, just one of my kids, we'll just use one of my kids for example. If I appoint one of my kids to have enduring power of attorney and whatnot over me, and being that I'm already being targeted against, you know, it wouldn't take much for a whole bunch of rotten apples to start manipulating my files, sit up there and accuse me of being delusional or whatever they want, you know, to maim and harm and injure, so that they can push out my kids through one of these acts, start accusing my kids of abusing me to solidify what they're doing, because they need to protect me from my kids now, right? Right? And then just take over my life and lock me up in some hospital setting and start giving me a whole bunch of drugs to keep me quiet. And if I try and fight back, then obviously I'm being hostile and aggressive and, you know, an enemy to the estate, to the state, not the estate, but to the estate, you know, to that union sector, right? Because I'm not letting them walk all over me. So as I'm reading this stuff, like it does, you know, it scares the pants off me, not so much for myself, although considering what's been going on, you know, I wouldn't put it past them, people. I just wouldn't put it past them. But for the thousands of others that are going to get caught up in this riffraff of legislation that I'm sure in many ways goes against the Canadian Charter of Human Rights, right? And like I said, there is that article. I hope I photocopied it in with my binders there. I hope I come across it, where it specifically said there are like tens of thousands, well, not tens of thousands, but 10,000 individuals who are basically being illegally detained in the province of British Columbia, Canada, because of the funky rules and regulations that we have regarding how healthcare professionals and whatnot take over people's assets, basically, for the protection of the adult. When in fact, as I'm reading this stuff, it is not for the protection of the adult. Removing people from their families and having strangers manage their money for them at a fee because it keeps the economy going as the family gets destroyed and the individual is locked up, isolated, and medicated to be controlled? That's some scary crap, people. Now, I'm not saying, there's people out there that wouldn't benefit from that, but again, all you have to do is look out in the streets to see the hypocrisy around these legislations, these acts, these statutes, these laws, whatever you want to call them. Because the ones that really need the health care, in terms of what these things are written for, they're not getting it. They're not getting it. My daughter is not getting this stuff, people. And she would benefit to a large degree to have some of this stuff applied to her. Right? In I want to say loving healthcare environment, but there's nothing loving about the healthcare system anymore, people. Very little. That's not what it's running on. It's not running on love. It's that Christmas Scrooge. Where can we find the curtains? Let's look for the rings. Let's look for the coins. What are you doing? Where can we find the wallet? Where's the keys to the house? Right? That kind of stuff. That's what this stuff is written for. And if you actually took the time to read it, you would see that there is nothing in there that suggests that they're protecting the adult outside of protecting the assets of that adult so that other people can benefit from it. As they remove power of attorneys, enduring power of attorneys and all that stuff from legitimate people that are going to be blindsided when it comes their turn to lose their family member to this type of system. And just to give you an example, I'm going to read a section here. This is number 19 of the Patient Property Act. Okay? It says, on a person becoming a patient, as defined in paragraph B of the definition of patient in section 1, I'll read that. A person who is declared under this act by a judge to be incapable of managing his or her affairs, incapable of managing himself or herself, or incapable of managing himself or herself or his or her affairs. So in this case, the person has to be deemed to be that by a judge. So that is where a person or a committee or the public guardian trustee would make an application to the judge to say, so-and-so in that house over there is a little cuckoo, and the people that he lives with or associates with are not allowed to have enduring power of attorney because, the person that's a little loony needs intervention, right? So they can just go to the court, file an application for that intervention, and then the judge will decide, more than likely, to side with them, because of course the judge is not going to get the full details of that person and their life. They're just going to get that ghostwriting situation, and they're going to side on the error of caution before they actually do the research, right? Or even be fair for that matter, because the system isn't set up for that any more than, say, child apprehension, right? Keeping those kids in the system 10,000 deep year after year after year after year is a staple for the industry in terms of a justice system and all the people that make money from that situation, right? So anyway, on a person becoming a patient as defined in paragraph B, which is done through a judge, of the definition of patient in section 1, every power of attorney given by the person is terminated. So automatically, that, like, if somebody went to court and said John's cuckoo, you know, and, you know, we want intervention, and the judge says, oh, okay, that would mean that would remove me completely from enduring power of attorney, even though I had it for 25 years. So you're just like a sitting duck. It's almost like these enduring power of attorneys mean nothing. If it's that simple for people to challenge them based on ghostwriting or, you know, accusations or false allegations, or maybe you just don't like that person and you just want to fuck their life over. Seriously, people. B, unless the court orders otherwise, every representation agreement made by the person is terminated. So, regardless of what's been going on in your life for 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, or whatever it is, all it's going to take is one mean, nasty person to come in and stick it to you, go to court, file an application against you, accuse you of this, accuse you of that, accuse your family of this, accuse your family of that, and guess where your ass is going to be? It's going to be locked up in some hospital getting shock therapy under the law of an opiate so that you can't fight back. As the committee now goes into your personal life and starts looking for your assets, which is a form of an audit, to which they would take that information and forward it to the public guardian and trustee. And then from there, all those people get to decide how they're going to spend your money, if and when, where you're going to go, what kind of treatment you're going to get, with or without your consent, because you're incapable by this point, right? And good luck getting out of that rabbit hole in terms of finding your way out, because your family more than likely has been criminalized, right? All your children have been criminalized, you know, except for the ones that side with that side on the fence, right? You know, this is the way I interpret these laws, people. This is what I've been reading for the last little while, as I'm reading, like I'm reading this stuff, and it really hit me like about 5 nights ago. I was reading this, and I'm like, oh my God, it was the Guardianship Act or something. I'm like, oh my God, am I actually reading this? Like, it is so scary to know that it is that easy to come in and destroy lives. And being that there's a big, you know, this baby boom coming in with these predators swimming around them like sharks, you know, whether it's the realtors, whether it's these committees that appoint themselves for a fee, whether it's the guardian and trustee that appoint themselves for a fee, whether it's the lawyers, you know, when they're involved, you know, whether it's the old folks' homes that get propped up with these old folks being forced into these old folks' homes because they've been deemed incapable after their assets have been seized from their loved ones, in terms of those official enduring power of attorneys that have been removed from their positions through these committees and the public guardian and trustee, simply by ghostwriting that goes in front of judges that don't want to take the time to see for what is actually going on in society in terms of the numbers being wrongfully detained and medicated against their will to keep the system afloat. That's what I'm seeing, people. If I'm reading something and it's scaring me, and I've read novels like this of horror stories, one after another, when I was young, and it never really scared me, but this scares me, that's telling you something. That's telling you something, people. I suggest when you have some time you really should download these acts for whatever your particular province or state is, seriously, and start educating yourself on this, because this is a political agenda. This is not in the best interest of the public. This is a political agenda. It's like a money grab. It's a cash cow. And even though you may think you have power of attorney or enduring power of attorney or whatever it is that you think that you have, it can be terminated very, very quickly. And this is exactly why the sister and the team bypassed this situation, because again, there would have been fees attached to managing John's estate, basically. And you know, for every dog there's a bone. Right?